Pilot Say What?
What?
Exactly. Welcome to the next episode of Pilot Say What, where we hear what pilots have to say. The idea here is to sit down with Zach and kind of pick his brain a little bit. We don't have anything too specific to talk about other than kind of, I've seen you around the school. You're a CFI. I feel like you have a little experience maybe, and you
Just a
can
little
speak to
bit.
that yourself. But before we get into anything, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Zach Davis. I'm a flight instructor here at Thrust Flight. Hadn't been too long. Got hired on end of July, early August. Did all my flight training here at Thrust. Started just a little over a year ago today. Started last September. 0 time.
Yeah.
Through it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you know anything about aviation before you got started?
Little bit, not really. It's kind of a career change kind of thing for
Oh,
me.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of you caught yourself off guard a little bit, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, it was a year and a half ago, if you told me I'd be flying planes every day now, I'd be like, what?
Could not even believe it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you doing before?
So I graduated from college last August, so like
Mhm.
right before I started. I was finishing school
Mhm.
online. I was working in insurance.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a little bit of fun.
Yeah, not a whole lot.
So, what kind of tipped your hat to becoming a pilot?
So, growing up, my dad had a friend that flew,
Mhm.
but it was kind of like I said, it was a career change.
Yeah.
I didn't know programs like this existed, right? And
Right.
then I knew a couple people that were in programs similar, not at Thrust, but similar programs.
Mhm.
And so around that time when I was like, I'm not really enjoying this,
Yeah.
I had started looking into it, and that's really when I kind of dove into it.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I loved it. Never looked back. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
That's a cool story that I always hear from a lot of the people we're talking to on the podcast is they're always like, "Yeah, I don't know, I didn't know, and then I did know, and then I did it," and it's just kind of
yeah.
like that's really cool because you speak to a lot of people who just don't ever do anything they want to
Mhm.
do, kind of. So it sounds like a lot of fun. Well, where are you from? Are you from Dallas? And you kind of told me a little bit before the podcast.
Yeah, so from Central Texas, small
Hmm.
town, Brownwood. Grew up there, and moved to Austin. I
Hmm.
think it was 7th grade.
Yeah,
So around middle school, and then from there, kind of bounced around a couple years for college.
yeah.
Lived out in Odessa for a year, and then actually lived here in Dallas for a year.
Oh, you did.
Back in Brownwood for a little bit, and
Yeah.
then Austin for a little bit. Well, I was doing online classes during
Okay.
COVID because that was all crazy.
Yeah, as a whole
Yeah,
other
no.
world.
Yeah, and then I was in Houston for a few months right before, actually, right by our Conroe location, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, for a few months before I moved up here to start.
Well, I want to go back to asking about when you started because there's usually something that makes someone want to go ahead and make that like that first step or the next step and maybe changing their career or becoming a pilot. What kind of pushed you over the edge?
I spent a lot of time on Google,
Okay, gotcha.
just kind of looking around, and then this is when I was back, uh, moved from Houston.
Hmm.
I found a little flight school out in Weatherford to go do a discovery flight at.
Yeah.
And, yeah, after that hour, I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do.
How long did it take from when you did that discovery flight till actually like maybe like choosing to go to school? How long did it take?
Oh, it didn't take very long at all.
Yeah,
I did my discovery flight I think it was last July.
last July.
And then I started here. I think it was September 10th of last year.
Yeah, so you made it happen all
yeah.
the way here in Dallas too. So you didn't just start flight training. You moved and then started flight
hmm
training all
Yeah,
at
it was
once. Yeah.
kind of a interesting thing. So I hadn't, like, when I was doing my research on everything, I never found Thrust.
Oh.
And so I was looking at other programs, and
Mhm.
I was sitting at home one day, sitting there on Flight Radar. I was just kind of bored, and
Yeah.
I was looking around Dallas and clicked on a random smaller plane on there, and saw Thrust Flight.
Oh, that's like
And
yeah.
so that's when I started looking into it, and I was like, oh, okay. So I called up, talked to Nathan for a little bit, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think I started 2 weeks later.
Oh yeah. You're like, oh, okay, well I'll go check it out and then
Yeah.
done for. That's great. That's a crazy way to have found it. A lot of people do find this through Google or YouTube
Mhm.
or something like that, and then also referrals, of course. But that's a fun way to just randomly
Yeah.
click on a plane and see where they're from. Well, awesome. So now, let's say you started back in September of 2023 at Thrust Fly as a
Mhm.
student, right? And then eventually become a CFI. About how long have you been a CFI now?
I've been a CFI since the beginning of August, early
Since
August. Well, that's when I got hired.
that's when you got hired as a
Yeah.
CFI, anyways.
hmm
But there was a little gap between you being a student and being a CFI here, right?
Yeah.
What was that about?
So I did. Let's see, my CFI initial was I think around May,
Okay.
and then I did May or June. I think it was June. And then I
Yeah.
did my CF double I in the middle of July. And so
Okay.
it was just like a couple weeks of doing the interviey process and all that
Okay.
stuff
Okay.
before I
Gotcha.
started.
And did you say you had the opportunity? What did you say earlier? You had the opportunity to get an extra. I can't remember what you
Yeah,
said.
so I got my MEI
Oh yes,
pretty
that's
soon
all you were saying.
after. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I wanted to roll into some of these questions we have prepared for you because you've been a CFI here for a little while, and I'm imagining the people who are listening sometimes are maybe students or other CFIs. I mean, really anyone who's interested. But I like to kind of start off with something kind of casual, like, do you take snacks with you in your bag when you go on a flight?
Our flights, no, I don't
No,
take
not
snacks.
ours.
Can't
No.
eat in our planes.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Well, on a commercial flight, what's your favorite flight snack?
I'm really big on goldfish.
Really?
I
The
like
goldfish do it
goldfish.
for you?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I
awesome.
can't really. So I'm allergic to peanuts. Like when they use
Oh,
that, like they don't really do it as much anymore, but they give
yeah.
out peanuts. Yeah, I never
hmm
could.
I love peanuts. And does it mean you can't eat peanut butter?
Mm-mm.
That's what that means, right?
Yeah,
That's terrible.
yeah. I have to eat. It's like fake peanut butter. They
Yeah.
make it with like sunflower seeds or something.
I would ask you if it tastes like peanut butter, but I guess you're
I wouldn't
not. Yeah,
know. Yeah.
I guess I'll have to try it out. It's probably healthier though, honestly. Peanut butter's
Maybe.
not very healthy. Okay, and then do you every pilot has a bag they take up, even especially the CFIs here at the school, even in our planes. What do you have in your bag? What kind of stuff do you have in there? You have
My
anything
bag.
unique in there?
It's pretty not really unique.
Oh,
I have all the stuff like that I need to fly, right? So like all my
yeah.
documents, my headset, my iPad,
Yeah?
right? Because especially starting out here, you teach a lot of instrument.
Yes.
So approach plates, all that good stuff. Gotta
hmm
have that on the iPad. My sunglasses.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't
Yeah.
fly without them
Yeah.
anymore. I
How long
flew.
did it take to get the right sunglasses?
Oh, I just got them.
Really?
Yeah. So obviously I wear glasses,
hmm
right? So I had sunglasses, prescription sunglasses. They're not cheap, by the way.
Yeah, I would imagine not.
So I had my sunglasses, and then they were in my truck last December, and my
Uh-huh.
truck got stolen.
Oh, what the
Yeah.
heck? That's a
So I
wild. Yeah,
didn't
okay.
have sunglasses, and then I had to wait. I waited for my insurance to roll over, so I
hmm
just got them. I think it was a couple months ago.
Yeah,
I love them. I can't
and
fly
they're like
without
the
them now.
prescription ones. Oh man,
Yeah.
that's a game changer, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Because what are you supposed to do? Like, what do people do when they wear glasses and they need sunglasses? They typically just get prescription ones, or are there ones that go over or
Yeah, it
something?
has to be like the prescription or maybe like contacts or something. But for me, like I have
Mm,
a limitation on my medical. It says I have to wear my glasses.
that's
So
crazy. So you
yeah.
had to go and get the nicer
hmm
glasses. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So I
And
flew for like 6 months without my sunglasses.
oh man, that's tough. Out here in Texas too, with this,
Yeah,
that we
right.
got that Texas. I mean, I'm sure the sun's similar everywhere, but
Yeah.
but it gets hot too.
Yeah.
Well, so I don't know. I heard someone was talking about it on one of the podcast episodes we did, and I kind of forgot a little bit. But there's different types of sunglasses you're actually able to wear, right? Because is it because of the avionics, the
Yeah, so you
polarized
just
or
can't wear
something?
polarized lenses.
Yeah. What does that mean actually?
So I
Do
don't
you
have like a
know?
great understanding of
Okay,
it.
gotcha.
I just know briefly. I know it's something to do with like the way the lights are on the avionics, I
hmm
guess.
hmm
The polarized, the way you see out of them, you just can't really see the streams. It's really dark.
Right, that makes
So
sense. Okay, because and I know there's a polarizer filter that goes with the camera sometimes, and it
mm.
has a certain way of blocking certain types of light, and I still don't understand it myself either. So that's
Yeah.
why I was wondering.
I
But
just
basically, for any new pilots or something looking for sunglasses, just avoid the polarized ones,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I just know I got lucky because when I first started getting that first pair of sunglasses I had, I was in private. My private instructor just don't get polarized.
Yeah,
So he
so
gave
you
me a
knew
heads
better.
up on it,
Yeah,
thankfully.
that's cool. Because most are, I think, right?
hmm
It seems like yeah, that's the standard. Okay, well, I just like to ask some of those things. Well, I'm sure there's some things from when you were a student that you maybe think back to as a CFI, right? Things that are like, oh, I wish I would have learned it a certain way, or maybe I struggled with this one thing, and it makes so much sense now. If maybe someone that taught to me a certain way, I could have understood it. I'm wondering if there's anything you struggled with as a student that you like to teach now.
Um, so the biggest like piece of advice for stuff I have like that. So when I first started, right, I'm
Mhm.
not really like the most like outgoing person. Like
Uh-huh.
I'll kind of do things on my own. So I was trying to study and do all that stuff on my own.
Mhm.
Thankfully, not too long into it, something I studied with a group. And
Yeah.
so,
And how'd you like if someone said that to you? Do you kind of just like,
yeah, at first I was like, like maybe they're just saying that, and
yeah,
then I was still doing my thing, but that the group of guys I started with,
mhm.
we had just naturally formed a little group,
Okay.
and we studied together all the way through every rating,
Mm,
and it made it so much easier. Like there may be something that I struggled with that they were good on, something that they struggled with that I knew a little bit more about.
yeah,
So we could kind of help each other in that way.
that makes sense. Do you feel like I'm sure there's people you started with that maybe found their own group or didn't like weren't a part of y'all's group. I'm wondering, like, did someone just initiate? Did y'all just come to the school at a certain time, or y'all were always around?
Kind of, we were always around.
Okay.
So I mean, with thrust, right? It's fast, it's accelerated.
Yeah, it's an accelerated
So I
program.
kind of treated it, especially really early on, kind of treated it like a full time job, right?
Hmm.
Because I didn't have a job
Hmm.
because I was going through the flight training.
Yeah.
So I was up here every day, and especially at that
Mm,
time, I lived way out, and so I had to. It was a little bit of a drive to get here, and so I was kind of just stuck at school in between things,
hmm.
and which was good, right? It kept me here all day. It kept me
Yeah.
studying and doing the things I needed to do.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot.
So just being you were here and you were present, and
Hmm.
that's what I was wondering because sometimes it's not always easy to what's the word maybe even organize hanging out
Yeah,
with your
right.
friends, let alone study together. But that probably is something that was made easier just by being here. It
Mhm.
seems like because even when I go over there, I see the same people over there studying,
Yeah.
and I see them move into their CFI role and things like that. So I always wondered, I'm like, well, how are you guys organize this?
Yeah, and it kind of worked out too. Like the two guys specific. Like you've had them both on here, Nolan and Will.
Yeah,
They were in kind of same scenario. Nolan an hour drive, Will's almost an hour drive. So we were all three just kind of
just hanging
always
out.
up there. Yeah.
Yeah. So as a student, did you have a couple of fights? Like usually, you would come in for some study for ground, and then eventually you're practicing flying.
Mm.
I mean, how many hours are you actually here to do something that's scheduled as a student?
As a student, so it depends. Normally, you can have like 1 to 2 flights a day,
Hmm.
and then ground class. So
Hmm.
just a few hours.
Everyone I talk to seems like they come for those things, but they never talk about how much time they spend on those things. Most of their time seems to be spent in their study groups, like you were
Hmm.
talking about. Um, and so, was that not like something that kind of caught you off guard? You said you kind of preferred to have studied alone until you realized the benefits. Were you ever coming here and just leaving?
No,
No.
no,
Okay.
it was
Yeah.
too much driving for that,
Okay. That's what I
and the
thought.
whole drive was 6:35, and
Oh yeah,
yeah.
6:35 is fun. I'm curious if you knew that becoming a flight instructor was a part of the journey to becoming a pilot.
So when I first started looking into it, and I was kind of like, okay, what happens like right after flight school, right?
Mm.
Because originally I was like, oh, cool, you get your commercial, and you can go do anything,
Yeah, you can go
right?
make some money. Yeah.
And I was reading into it, like, no, that's not the case, right?
Hmm.
So once I started reading into it, like, flight instructor is a good way to like build your hours, get to where you want to go, but it's not just an hour building thing, right?
Right. Right. It builds a lot of
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and
Hmm.
I honestly loved it, like that side of things. Like I've really enjoyed being able to teach, and like
Mm.
I loved going through thrust. Like it was great.
Yeah.
So being able to give back to that a little bit, right?
And it's kind of cool because you already know the system or the
Yeah.
structure of the school, the curriculum, in a way that you can kind of like step into that role with maybe a little less friction.
Mm.
Is there anything that you like teaching the most?
So most of what I do is multi. So I
Yeah.
love teaching multi. It's a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
It was that. Did they kind of put you there, or did you kind of find your way there because you liked it?
So it was I had just finished my commercial multi add-on.
Okay.
That was a interesting thing because I did the one. My check ride was the one with the FAA to get our self-examining for our 141 multi course.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah,
pretty
so I
cool.
just finished that, and then it got brought up to the opportunity to do my MEI,
Hmm.
and so I like, yeah, I'd love to do that.
Okay, and for myself, and just in case someone's listening and they're still learning a lot of things, MEI. Can you explain what the MEI is?
Yeah, it's a multi-engine
Oh,
instructor.
that's just it's just the abbreviation. Okay, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure. There we go. Well, anyhow, so you that's what you enjoy teaching the most? Is it because you like the plane, or is it there are certain things about it you just enjoy that process?
Both. I like the
Yeah.
plane. It's different challenges, right? Because
Hmm.
with the multi-engine now, a lot of the training's involved around engine failures,
Absolutely.
right? Flying with one engine, what are you going to do in that scenario, right?
Yeah.
So it's just not to say added difficulty, but it's
Hmm.
different than you would get in a single engine, right?
I would imagine you get more light bulb moments out of students, sort of, and not necessarily because they don't know. It's because it is so different.
Mm.
I'm wondering, let's say you're starting off with a student, you're getting them started on training with the Seminole or something like that we have. What do you teach them first? What do you go over first?
So the big thing I tell everybody before we get on the plane, big things is the engine outflow, right?
Hmm.
Because that's new.
Yeah.
And a lot of the multi-engine training is evolved around, not evolved around, but centered around the loss of an engine, right?
Hmm.
So that's a big thing. And then as far as like the ground, talking about what's new.
And that's what I'm wondering. What's new? Like, what do the people really need to know when they're getting started with that? After, of course, they take into account.
Yeah. So the big thing with the ground is the new stuff. So systems, there's more complex systems, right? Now we have retractable gear, we have the constant speed prop. There's 2 engines that you gotta control and do everything for and monitor. It's kind of everything that goes along with that is the big thing. It's because it's not really early on students that we get from the multi. A lot of it is current instructors or people that just finished their double I. So
Okay, gotcha. And our students, let's say our students are coming through their private, their instrument, and their commercial, and let's say they're not going to go on to be a CFI here at Thrust Me, or they're choosing to do something else or go somewhere else. Um, are they still going to finish their multi-engine with us because that's part of the program, right?
Yeah. So I just had a student come back from. He has been instructing in Louisiana for a while. He just came back in for a week or 2 and finished up his multi.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that they do it that way sometimes. One thing I wanted to ask was, what is the difference in the way it feels in the controls? I mean, it's still left foot, right foot, right?
Oh yeah.
But like, are the controls different? Like, are you doing different things?
As far as the flight controls, no, right?
Yeah.
You're still just flying the plane. Still the same controls. The only thing that really changes with that is the throttle quadrant. Now there's 2 of everything.
Okay.
There's 2 of everything, and you have in the prop controls to change that stuff as well.
Gotcha. Did people struggle with is there any adjusting they struggle with there, or is it kind of everything carries over pretty smoothly?
Yeah, it's getting used to doing more things with your hands, right? And the power settings are different because now you have manifold pressure. It's not just RPMs; it's manifold pressure and RPMs that you're looking at. The big thing is a lot of people. I did it too. When I was doing my multi add-ons, I'd fixate on the numbers when I'm moving everything. It's getting people to like, okay, put it where you think it goes,
where it feels right.
Check it, and then if you need to adjust from there, do it.
You know, that reminds me. I think I have one of the questions that has something to do with. So does that go along with developing your situational awareness kind of thing? Because people can get fixated on things, and that'll affect how they are aware of what's around them because they're too worried about the inside.
Yeah. Especially right with our G1000s,
Yes.
right? It's got 2 big screens in front of us. I know when I finished my instrument training, right, I was like 100% inside the plane. My first couple flights for commercial training was we were trying to break my habit of just staring at the screen the whole time and getting back to looking outside, right?
Yeah.
Avoiding traffic, especially for commercial maneuvers, right? They're designed to look outside the airplane.
Right.
And I struggled with them for a little bit, and then finally my instructor was like, "Hey," and covered up the PFD while I started a maneuver, and I was looking outside, and I was like, it's so much easier now.
Yeah, so much easier.
Yeah.
What maneuvers are you learning during the commercial?
During commercial, so it's a bunch of private maneuvers. So you still have your slow flight, stalls, your takeoffs and landings, and all that stuff. But you have a few added in maneuvers. So you have chandelles, lazy eights, eights on pylons, your steep spirals. All
that's more maneuvers than so far than instrument and private, right? Like you have to do a lot more during your commercial.
Yeah.
Which of those? I'm wondering what people find the most difficult during commercial.
Let's see. For me, it was lazy eights.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the one that really clicked when my instructor finally covered up the screen. Because there's a lot going on with it, and over controlling the aircraft for one was what I struggled with. But it was also I was trying to get everything perfect on the numbers, like looking at my heading. Okay, I need to be slicing through the horizon at my 90 degrees rather than not my 90 degrees, but I have these points that I've picked out. This is where I should be doing this.
Okay.
Yeah.
What sort of advice can you give someone during like maybe even a lazy eights maneuver? Because I haven't talked to anyone about lazy eights yet. So yeah, what are some of the key things that you think are going to make someone more successful at that maneuver?
So that maneuver specifically, I kind of mentioned over controlling the airplane. That maneuver should be very light on the controls.
Okay.
So that was my thing. I was trying to get everything perfect. I like to say fly the maneuver. Like you don't grab. You're not grabbing the yoke. Put 2 fingers behind it and just kind of gently pull.
And what is the point of the lazy eights?
Lazy eights is just kind of mastery of the aircraft, right?
Okay.
It's shows some overbanking tendencies with the plane. Really, it should be a slow, fluid maneuver.
Okay, gotcha. And that's the point of it, though. What is the plane doing when you're doing a lazy eight?
When you're doing a lazy eight,
Yeah.
so you're showing the first turn, you're showing overbanking tendencies.
Oh, okay.
So the plane's going to want to tend to overbank.
Okay.
So that first turn, right, you start out generally about 5 degrees of bank, and you're slowly pitching up. And the slower you get, the more the plane's going to want to bank over. And so it's getting that feel into letting it bank over rather than doing it yourself.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So that exposes the student to, like you said, the tendency that the plane would do that. That's something you wouldn't be aware of if you didn't practice that maneuver until you were trying to maybe fly that way.
Yeah. So part of the setup of the maneuver is you pick your points for the maneuver.
Yeah.
So it actually got me looking outside
In the
and
side
actually,
picture, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And actually using my points and flying the maneuver like that.
Okay, I gotcha. Because if you're looking at the G1000, you're probably just trying to make the numbers do something.
Oh yeah,
right?
I was staring at my 45 degree, my 90, and my 135 the whole time.
And you're trying to get them somewhere, but without realizing the plane's going to do that more naturally. And when you're looking outside the plane, you can kind of tell and feel it. Probably is what I'm thinking. Okay,
you can feel it and you can hear it.
Yeah, gotcha.
You can like hear the prop speeding up when you're getting fast. And
yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that's why I like to ask those sorts of things. But going back to the multi-engine, I guess I just wanted to ask maybe a few more questions about it because it's not that much different, it sounds like then, except for how much you have to do with your hands. So what is it what skill is it that is going to help them the most when they get into their multi-engine?
Not necessarily skill, but really just coming prepared for it, right? Having that maneuvers guide memorized, that engine outflow memorized. Chair flying helps so much for that plane. Really just getting all that stuff hammered out before we get into the plane helps so much.
Gotcha. That's because that way they don't have to, again, think too hard about what's going on.
I mean, there's more going on. The plane's a little bit faster, especially around the airport environment.
Yeah.
Things really speed up on you. And so having that stuff hammered out and memorized before we get in the plane helps a lot.
So we have the Seminole, right? What do people, is that like the most common plane that people would practice their multi-engine in, or do you know?
I know it's a very common training plane for multi.
Okay, gotcha. I was just curious, but I still haven't been in the Seminole. I kind of want to go, so it'll
It's
be kind of fun. Yeah, it seems like a cool plane. Someone was telling me recently I should get my private.
You should.
And maybe I should just vlog the experience. That'll be some of our YouTube videos. I don't know how. I need to go up a couple more times, see how I feel.
Yeah.
It'd be cool. Well, I have this question that that I wrote down. Some students are like kind of nervous going into their flight training. What was something that made you a little nervous going into flight training?
Man, it's talking to ATC.
Yeah,
I was terrified to talk to air traffic control.
Yeah. What was it about it? I mean, I know air traffic control, like there's a lot of lingo that you need to pick up, and they're fast paced. For me, I can't probably make out what they say half the time. So what was it that was so nerve wracking though?
The fast pace and just thinking like, hey, I'm gonna get in trouble if I say something wrong, right? And you're not. They know you're learning, they know you're training. Granted, we shouldn't just be like holding the button, right?
Yeah,
and just sitting there thinking about what we're gonna say. We should know what we're gonna say before we do it. But yeah, that was definitely the biggest thing that I was nervous about.
Did you do anything crazy ever that someone checked you on?
Not that I can remember.
Never went too bad.
No, I can remember my first call to regional though. I remember that I was like kind of talking and then I stuttered and froze, and then like was trying to get it out, and then my instructor took over and finished the call, and we laughed about it later. But it's funny looking back at that now.
And then after that, did they kind of break some of the nerves? And I mean, did you kind of get it down?
Yeah, it took a few flights after that to kind of get the feel for it. But
yeah, I feel like I would freeze up a little bit over it, and I wouldn't want them to think it sounded funny or something like that. I know that you saw our episode with the ATC that we had on the podcast, right? Did you learn anything from that maybe, or I mean, you were already, I think, a CFI by that point,
Yeah.
right? But was there anything interesting that stuck out to you on that episode?
Yeah, for me it was the view on flight following, right? Because we pick up flight following every time coming back into Addison when the towers open.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like sometimes on our end it feels like they're super busy. Like, do we really need to be bothering them with this? But hearing them talk about how flight following actually helps them, like they would much rather us be talking to them on flight following, have eyes on us, than just flying around out there.
Yeah, I was foreseeing that being like a pretty big key moment in the episode, because I remember how they were saying that, and even I, as not being a pilot, could easily assume that, like, hey, the less you have to say to them, the better, because they're busy guys or whatever. But they got to highlight how much value that actually adds to what they're doing, because what they're doing is they're organizing all these pieces on the airport. In my mind, that's how I'm imagining them, and you just gave them another piece that to be aware of. But that's pretty cool. Is that something, did that change the way you teach anything to your students?
Not necessarily the way we teach it, right? Because we're always going to pick up the flight following back into Addison. It was just kind of an eye opener for me on that.
That's cool. Okay. And then what kind of what sort of advice would you have for someone who is nervous about talking to ATC? What helps out with that?
So for me, there's an app. I think Plain English, if I remember correctly. I downloaded that app, and it's got a lot of just like practice scenarios you can go through. So I sat at home going through the scenarios they have on that app. I did that a lot, and then live ATC. This was advice from my private instructor. I think it was Andrew, but I think it was him that said it. But just get on live ATC and pick out a tail number or two, and every time you hear ATC talk to that tail number, sit there, pause it, or do what you need to do, but respond to it. Practice responding to it, and then listen and say, okay, that was right.
Be like, I did it right. Okay, gotcha. I heard people talk about that.
Yeah, because that's more like real speed kind of thing.
And so maybe the plain English, if that's what it is called, that's like more so just to actually kind of get familiar with what is supposed to be said at very least. But the behavior of it is probably a little better to practice with live ATC. Right?
Oh yeah,
I hear people talk about live ATC. I'm gonna have to go look it up for myself. So I can hear it.
Been on there a lot.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So do they just upload everything that goes up?
Yeah, so it's live too.
Oh, it's live. That's what you're
saying. So they have live feeds, and then they have the archives, which is past that you can look up.
Gotcha. That's such a wild thought process that everything's so public when it comes to planes.
Yeah, and they have it for so many airports.
Yeah. We've got a lot of good things here. I think we're going to take some of our favorite parts out and put them on our Instagram account at Thrustlight on Instagram. If you guys enjoyed the conversation, if you're still listening, thank you for joining in. I don't even know what episode we're on now, but we're going to keep going. We're going to have, I think, another airline pilot soon. We're probably going to have a DPE soon. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next episode of Pilots Say What.